Donald Trump's inner circle is lying to Donald Trump. Donald Trump's inner circle has him so hermetically sealed in a cocoon in Washington at his golf course communities that no daylight, no public information is getting in. And the first among them, the first one who's lying to Donald Trump is Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, who devised the whole Immigration Alien Enemies Act deportation scheme, not a lawyer, giving Donald Trump poor legal advice as a non-lawyer, and then painting Donald Trump into a corner because the reason Donald Trump is lashing out at the Supreme Court, lashing out at polling agencies and polls conducted by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Fox News, and others, and lashing out at the media is because Stephen Miller is filling his head full of lies, telling him that he can refuse the Supreme Court rulings. That has led the American people to hate the Trump administration and their lack of obedience to the rule of law. And now we're in this biofeedback loop explaining in many ways why we have a failed Trump presidency. It all starts with Stephen Miller. I'm going to break it down right here on Legal AF. And while you're on Legal AF, two things I want to tell you about. One, subscribe here, because then you're going to get all the video information, analysis, and commentary at the intersection of law and politics. And by subscribing for free, then you'll get those reminders. We also have, I'm proud to announce, a new Substack. If you don't know what Substack is, you're going to love it. Go on there. You can find all sorts of commentary and all sorts of useful information by experts in the field. We created a Legal AF Substack just for you. You'll find it at Legal AF. And that's another way, by subscribing there, that's another way to support what we are doing at this all-important law and politics intersection. Okay, enough of the promos. Let's get to the content. I said from the very beginning, watch Stephen Miller. His title officially, White House Deputy Chief of Staff. In reality, he's Donald Trump's puppet master. He controls Donald Trump on domestic side. We thought it was Elon Musk, but it's really, when it comes to domestic policy, not dealing with, getting rid of employees and funding, it's Stephen Miller. And when it comes to immigration policy, the guy that devised the put children in cages and separate them from their parents back in the first Trump administration, he's back. Now, when Stephen Miller was out of power, he formed, as a non-lawyer, a law firm called America First AF Law. We should have sued him on Legal AF, but we let him go. And he hired lawyers to go after the Biden administration and keep his hand in all things related to policy. Once he got in, Boris Epshteyn was originally Donald Trump's consigliere throughout the entirety of him being criminal defendant Trump and criminal convict Trump and all those lawsuits while he was out of power. But we haven't seen hide nor hair of Boris Epshteyn ever since he had a fight with Elon Musk and others on the way into the White House. So Donald Trump got rid of Boris Epshteyn as his consigliere and really replaced him with Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller has told Donald Trump in no uncertain terms, and it's obvious, that he can reject the United States Supreme Court when it comes to immigration and deportation and removal and the Abrego Garcia case. You can see it in Donald Trump's actions. It explains it. It explains it all. Donald Trump naturally wants to disobey the United States Supreme Court anyway, but he's got Stephen Miller filling his head filled with all sorts of ridiculous, nonsensical jurisprudence that the Supreme Court's going to reject. But they've dug themselves a hole. They've painted themselves into that corner, because we heard it during the press conference with President Bukele, the dictator of El Salvador, where you heard Stephen Miller say, this is a 90-10 issue for us. This is a 90-10 issue for us. What's he talking about? He's talking about this is a winning issue for them to dig in on the immigration issue, even if it means rebelling against the United States Supreme Court. Except he missed the voter discontent with that. The polls came in the last week, 3 separate polls, all terrible against Trump. New York Times poll, 42% approval rating. And just as a context, Joe Biden was at 52% in his first 100 days. Obama was at 62%. George W. Bush higher than that. So 42%, yes, sounds low and is low. 39%, if you listen to the Wall Street Journal poll, 43% if you listen to the Fox poll. I haven't even gotten to the polls that show the vast majority of Americans, the supermajority of independents, and even a fair number, up to 17% of Republicans, think this country is headed in the wrong direction. Wrong direction, right direction polling is the number one indicator for who's going to win at the midterms. And Donald Trump is tremendously underwater. So how is all this happening? Because Stephen Miller put Donald Trump in a corner and just fed him a load of crap. We have a word for this. Stephen Miller made Donald Trump a mushroom. He put him in the dark and just fed him bullshit. That's how you grow a mushroom, apparently. So the 90-10 issue is very interesting. It's really Stephen Miller's acknowledgement that they're going to use for political purposes, keeping a man in prison without due process in a gulag in El Salvador. And they're going to ride that as long as they can. But the polls show the public is rebelling against it because it looks like what it is, defiance of the rule of law, rebelling against Supreme Court justices. And America apparently draws the line on that, which I would hope they would. But Stephen Miller has set Donald Trump up for that failure. Now, look, I'm not absolving Donald Trump. He makes his own decisions. But he's getting this poor advice from Stephen Miller, which we always knew was going to happen. Stephen Miller's takeaway from coming back into power, you saw him at the Madison Square Garden rally, America's for Americans. He's big on this xenophobic, anti-foreign, pull in the oars of America, America first, nationalism, nativism approach. And it's dangerous in a global world, in a United States that's filled with people from all different cultures and countries and religions and races and black and brown and others. It's dangerous to be holding a 1920s approach. Does anybody notice everything about Donald Trump's policies and approach is like out of the 1920s and 1930s, which I guess if you watch a movie, it's interesting, but does anybody want to return to the 20s and 30s? How could we return? Look at our country and how it's changed since then. But our tariff policies are out of the 1930s. Our immigration policies are out of the 1920s and 1930s. And what was that giant event that happened in the 1930s? It wasn't COVID. What was it? Right, the Great Depression. That's why I call Donald Trump our Hoover. He's our Hoover. He's not our JFK or FDR. He's our Hoover, and he's got Stephen Miller to blame. That's why they're starting to get him out of Washington, because he's doing 3-day weekends at Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster, and he's not meeting real people. He's not getting real information. They're putting him in places where he'll just bask in the adulation and glow of the 3,000 or 2,000 people they paid to be there. Like at the Michigan rally or otherwise. And they're trotting him out for these interviews where he's by himself without a wire, and he's doing terribly because he's being challenged by facts, not the BS that his inner circle is feeding him, but real facts. And he gets frustrated. I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to ask me questions. Right. You're in an interview. That's how that works. Oh, you're being very mean to me. You're bringing up a fact that I can't refute, like in the Terry Moran interview. Watch Stephen Miller. As I said in another hot take, one of the things that we learned in the Signal Gate, where all of those top intelligence and defense cabinet members and people in the Trump administration got together and put together a insecure signal chat to talk about military bombings of the Houthis in the Suez Canal. Remember that one just a couple of weeks ago? Put together by Mike Waltz. In there, buried in there, was proof of what I'm talking about. Stephen Miller runs the show. When people were starting to step out of line, like, who's the guy that's our vice president again? You can leave it in the chat. Right, J.D. Vance. Has anybody seen him lately? When J.D. Vance was like, well, I'm not sure that the POTUS has adequately thought through the issues about helping bomb the Houthis at this moment, which looks like it'll be helping the Europeans, and maybe we should consider not doing this. And Stephen Miller was like, I was at that meeting, and it was very clear the president's message. I have no doubt about what his instructions were. It was like Darth Vader talking for the emperor. Yeah. So the Darth Vader that's inside of that Death Star for Donald Trump is Stephen Miller. And make no doubt about it. Maybe in years past, it was somebody like Steve Bannon who was shown the door, or Boris Epstein, who I talked about earlier, or Michael Cohen way back in the day, my friend here and fellow podcaster. But today, the only one he's listening to on key issues as it relates to domestic policy is one Stephen Miller. I'll continue to follow it right here. 2 things to subscribe to help our pro-democracy and our independent commentary and journalism. Here, hit the subscribe button. We just crossed 600,000 this week. It's all for you. It's all because of you. And we're going to hit 1 million before our 1-year birthday at the rate that we're going with your help. We're adding 70,000 people a month to this YouTube channel. But we also have a Substack because there's things in writing, there's court cases that I can post there, and other commentators can contribute their work. So come over to Substack and just put @LegalAF, and there you go. Subscribe there. It's another way to promote and to vote yes for what we're doing here as our pro-democracy channel in collaboration with the brothers on Midas Touch. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe @LegalAFMTN. That's @LegalAFMTN.